things we're going to talk about today around the DAMA, DMBOK, and things like that. Essentially, Carl's going to talk about his data management program implementation model, and we're going to talk about how we're implementing a lot of the DAMA concepts in QualiWare. So, Carl, I'll just move slide by slide whenever
Sure.
Whenever you're ready. So,
okay,
go ahead.
All right. So my section of this is heavy on slideware. So just to set your expectations, I'm not going to be showing any QualiWare, but the guys are going to show some stuff. So we got a combination of slideware and then some QualiWare stuff, and we'll splice it through here. So basically, what I want to talk about is a framework that I've developed to help organizations, particularly in Ottawa, help them implement their data strategies. There was a lot of work done in the past X number of years coming out of Treasury Board and other departments about data strategies. Departments have been mandated to come up with these strategies. But based on the work that I've been doing and the research I've done, is a lot of folks are struggling with how to implement that. So the concept of bridging from strategy to implementation is a challenge. And what I want to present today is the data management program information model implementation model that I've developed. And ultimately what this model gives you is creates a roadmap for implementation. So as any good model, and with DAMA in mind, Kevin, we'll go to the next slide. The model itself is based on DAMA. And in fact, it's kind of interesting that DAMA itself, if you look at their book, the latest version of version 2, there's actually 6 models and frameworks in the book. So there's lots of choice. There's a strategic alignment model and pyramid model, functional areas, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what I've found is that really very few of the models, if any, are focused on implementation. And I've tried to address that challenge by developing this framework. Kevin, you can go to the next slide. So what I've done is taken the wheel segment, and if my transition worked, you'd see that the wheel segment is up in the top left. And the segments of the wheel represent the main sections here, starting with program management, governance, data architecture, modeling. So we have this what I call stack diagram, and it's kind of stack diagram, but also left to right, in the sense that in my brain, data comes from the left and goes to the clients on the far right. And that's the way that it's oriented. The Data Warehousing Institute uses a similar concept, left to right. But ultimately, the stack model starts at the bottom around storage. And if you look at the the big arrow on the left there, so you move from storage at the bottom to security and privacy, up to integration, up to the delivery processes and the access, and then up to architectures, modeling, governance, and ultimately program management. So that is the core streams, I can call them. The other thing I found interesting with DAMA itself is they really don't have a place for data. They have the wheel segments, they have the environmental factors, but they don't actually draw out data. So what I've done is I've created this layered approach. So for all of the streams, you have this layered approach of people, process, technology, and data. So what that now allows you to do is, for every stream of activity, because ultimately this drives out into activities that you would do and deliverables that you would produce to implement the strategy or implement your data management program. So you can now have a discussion for every single stream around who are the people, what are the processes, what are the technologies that you're using, and what is the data that we're talking about. So it gives a holistic model about implementation. So that's why it's kind of based on DAMA, as these other frameworks are. And I've been using this as a way to kind of look at all of DAMA's deliverables and say, okay, how do we produce those, in what order, what's the sequence, and things of that nature. The next slide is the what I call the deliverables view. And when we talk about implementation, I believe the word deliverable and looking at deliverables is a really good place to start. So what are the deliverables, and then you get into how are we going to produce them, who's going to produce them, what are the projects, et cetera, et cetera. So with DAMA laying out all of the deliverables, and given the ones that I've added around program management, we can now have a holistic view of all of the deliverables required to implement a data management program. The other thing I've done is the data analytics piece on the right, where you have data analytics in the yellow and data warehousing and BI. Those are typically the information or the data delivery processes, if you will. Again, starting at the bottom, you got your storage, your operation activities, you got your data security and privacy, you got integration, interoperability, and as you can see, the other layers, data quality. So with these deliverables in mind, what we basically do then is start, next slide, Kev, if you don't mind. The next slide would be then we would take those deliverables and that framework and create an implementation roadmap. And the roadmap really is a view of, multi-year, typically 3 to 5 years. What are all of the projects? What are all the streams of activities? What are all the deliverables that you're going to deliver? Who are the roles, the responsibilities, and things of that nature? So you can probably imagine that there's a lot of moving parts to implementing a broad program. Now, some clients might have already achieved a lot in their programs, and they're doing a whole bunch of things. So this could be then a way of doing a little bit of a look-see to see how they're doing against these different areas, if you want to consider it an assessment or a health check. But ultimately, it would be good to get a sense as to how the various clients or organizations are doing in implementing their data strategies, specifically in this case. But then the implementation model becomes a broader data management program for implementing the things that DAMA prescribes, which I think is a good model. I think the challenge with DAMA, and I've heard other people say, is that it's almost too much. How do we consume it? Well, what we're trying to do is to offer an implementation model view where people can consume that. Next slide. Excuse me. So what this slide is intending to show is how we're planning on leveraging QualiWare to deliver data management programs. And as you can see in the cogs, we call the cogs and the honeycombs, but the cogs, it's all kind of driven by DAMA, and the perspective that DAMA is an international body of knowledge that people seem to subscribe to. And what we're trying to do is simplify, although it's detailed, is to simplify how organizations would use that framework to implement their data management programs. The purple one is where we would, we'd have the DAMA reference model. Kevin, we're going to show that in a few minutes, but basically QualiWare itself will hold the DAMA reference model down to some level of granularity, probably not trying to describe the entire book, but if people want a reference model, it will be there. What we're looking at is extending that into basically another solution, what we call the data management program implementation model. So we would have a solution for organizations that want to implement a data management program while following the DAMA perspectives. Off to the right, what that solution set or solution would look like is a solution that would contain certain functions. It would be driven by the main deliverables that DAMA calls for and that an organization wants to have realized and produced. So we would have things like deliverables, we'd have milestones, we'd have tasks. And then, of course, that gets grouped into projects. So we'd have the concept of projects for the various streams of activity. We would have, things like level of effort in order to, what's required to deliver these deliverables. So we'd have planned hours, we'd have actual hours, we'd have some tracking. And then we'd have the concept of program and project management and tracking for this program. A lot of organizations use other kinds of products for project management, but what we're really talking about here is a program management capability centered on the data management program, so that we're bringing everything into the one spot where we have the models, we have the references, and all of the details that we would track. We would create master roadmaps and project schedules, of course, and we'd have all of the roles, responsibilities, competencies, which QualiWare has many of these capabilities already. we would look at, laying out the benefits, the outcomes and benefits of implementing the program, which the execs obviously will want to see. So what we're looking at doing is creating this solution set, or the solution that would be offered to help people and organizations implement their data management programs. A couple of slides just to give you some sense of the details. What we're looking at is the ability to map out, and this is an eye teaser, and I apologize for that, but fundamentally, most data strategies that I've seen lay out a whole series of actions and initiatives. And when you bump that up against the DAMA set of deliverables, you start to see that in many cases, the data strategies do not go down to a level of granularity where you can actually start implementation planning and detailing. So what you end up doing is, if you just drive it by the strategy, you'll probably hit some challenges when you need some more work done. For example, DAMA particularly expects software just to miraculously show up, whereas in our world, we have to do specifications, we have to do procurement activities and things like that. So the holistic set of deliverables here would give us not only the capability to implement the data strategy, but to implement the broader data management program. And that's what the colors show, is that sometimes they map, sometimes they don't. And this is just an example of some level of effort over month by month kind of thing. What we would have is a multi-year view. We would have the levels of efforts by roles, competencies. And the other thing is, when you have that data now, you can start looking at the organizational dimension. So the next slide, Kev, is where we start thinking about, particularly in Ottawa, a lot of people are talking about the chief data officer, and ultimately maybe is the client for a lot of the QualiWare things. But once you lay out what the chief data officer is going to do, and you probably lay that over a period of years, because it's a maturity, it's a function that will mature over time. This model shows kind of the full enchilada. They're doing all the data governance stuff. They're in, leading and driving the data analytics and business intelligence area. So we would, when you look at these roles in here, we would have the data about those roles, what projects they're on, and things of that nature through the repository. And once that structure is kind of mapped out year by year, we would also, look at, say at the bottom, what is the IT structure that mirrors that? Because I call it the yin and yang. The CDO will do certain things, and they will expect certain things from IT. And over time, some of the things that IT have been doing in the early days might be taken on more by the CDO function. So this flexes back and forth depending on the level of expertise in the groups and the level of maturity that the CDO function will take on or not. And we see the CDO as the primary business owner for the data strategy, if you will. So we're looking at an environment where we can support that analysis and those models. So again, tracking them over time with the costing and things of that nature. So the intention is to create this solution and offer it through the SALSA, as Kevin mentioned, Forteg and CBP and others. This would be another solution set that would be offered that would be used to help define, plan, manage, and track the data management program. So before we're going to show a little demo here in a minute, but just any questions on those slides? I'm going to come back at the end as well if you got any further questions later.
Eric Sheik here from D&D. Excellent presentation. I just
Thank
completed. It really hits home as business strategy in implementing anything. Is that there's a business strategy. There's get the different layers of people, technology. I finished an executive MBA, graduated in March from Telfair University here in Ottawa, and we visited the Silicon Valley and looking at technology and artificial intelligence and data models. And really what CEOs and businesses, whether it's government, public, or profit-based private industry, is they talk the same language you're talking. And they're talking in the language of there's a business strategy, There's a business plan to achieve those objectives in that business strategy, performance management. And then there's a data and artificial AI type strategy. So
Right.
don't come to the table without those 4 or 5 different strategies, or else we're not going to approve your project. So this is the kind of language I think D&D is starting to get up to, and I think a lot of the other government agencies is that if you don't have your technology and your data management plan, and on top of that is your social behavior and your artificial intelligence and all that, that is the language that people are starting to talk now. So your framework makes a lot of sense.
I appreciate that. Just a general comment, data analytics is getting a lot of airplay, as the CDO role is getting a lot of airplay. But what I've seen happen, particularly in this town, is they get a lot of airplay, they get a lot of attention, and they get a lot of support. But ultimately, in my view, if you don't do a proper job of implementing a data management program, they will hit a brick wall. Maybe, hopefully not brick wall, but they will get stalled down, because if you don't address some of the fundamental issues around data access, security, privacy, they will be starved for data. So what, and you know, I've kicked around a little bit. If you had the camera, you could see I got a bit of gray hair. So my intention with this is to try to avoid those brick walls, is to say, in order to do the data analytics, machine learning, et cetera, you know, let's deal with these other issues proactively up front, so that we can enable the, what I call the delivery of data, the analytics and the BI. Now, DAMA also has document and content management, but for what I'm seeing in this town, that's, you know, RDIMS and information management. But I appreciate that comment, and that's why I've tried to structure this. And even just simply putting a data management program at the top, where you've got a program management office, you got a program plan, you got implementations and all these other things, I think is the kind of discussion that execs appreciate. Because I think many people are struggling with implementing this stuff, and they do stall when they can't get the data they need. So
the other comment I would just add to what you just said, so is technology is driving knowledge. And you know, data, you know, information, you know, we take data, it goes into information, and we escalate it to knowledge at some point in time. And you know, with the, I guess, demograph is knowledge management, lessons learned, best practices is huge. So if you have the proper framework, which you are describing, it feeds into that also. So anyways, I digress, but that's
appreciate it. I wrote an article 20 years ago when I got into the BI and data warehousing area about knowledge management, and you know, a lot of people, it's just not happening. So I think the best we can hope for right now is repeatable data, repeatable views, repeatable reports, repeatable analysis, so that at least people can you know, repeat what people created the data for to support these decisions. A lot of people call it now evidence-based decisions. Well, you know, you need the ability to recreate those that data, and I think through following a program like this, you not only get the repeatability, but ultimately, first time through, you get the ability to deliver the data. And again, with the DAMA, and this is why I really like the QualiWare thing, you know, with the metadata references, with the various tools, with the enterprise architecture. Like, this is all about data, but there's a layer of architecture as well. And you know, when you talk about the technology layer, that's really where, from an enterprise architecture perspective, what is EA's support for all of this data stuff, and what are the processes? So it's naturally, you know, Kevin and I have known each other for years, and to me, it's a natural thing to unfold this. I launched the DAMA chapter in Ottawa many years ago. I tried to do something similar way back then, but quite frankly, it was too new. And the fact that many people now are struggling with the data strategies, I think the timing is right to do something like this. So I appreciate your input there. Kev, I'll turn it back to you, because I know we're getting short on time.
So I'm going to take it back to you know, a physical level here, and say, take a line from Bob Bover and say, yes, we can. So if I look at data modeling and design, conceptual, logical, physical data models, those are already in QualiWare. using QualiWare for reference and master data and metadata information, already in QualiWare. If you look at, from a data architecture perspective, an enterprise data model, implementation roadmaps,
Business glossary.
setting up strategy models, all of that already in the tool set. So QualiWare, as a tool, has many of the components, that Carl's, showing here would be part of a program. So our ability to support, this kind of implementation model is already there. And so here's the DAMA, wheel in QualiWare right now. We've been, Rick Richardson, who's a data guy from way back, has been putting this stuff into QualiWare for us to use. And I mean, really, the wheel here, it's just, it's an architecture framework, right? It's a high level table of contents. What do I want to drill down to? DAMA, as Carl said, has a number of sort of those structures, and here's another one from a functional level. Data governance, lifecycle management, and foundational activities. So data security, metadata management, data quality management, analytics, document management, data storage and operations. So all the things that, we saw, on Carl's framework here, his reference implementation model, we've gone back to the standard, to the DMBOK, and put that in QualiWare. So for each of the pieces of the wheel, they actually have a concept model. And here is that concept model for data governance and stewardship. And I mean, it's a complicated model. There's a lot of things in it. And here's a snapshot of that model, the upper part of that model. We've got a series of goals identified. We've got a definition for data governance and stewardship. We've got a series of inputs and activities and business drivers and deliverables coming out of it. So these models, Close Reach is instantiating these models in QualiWare to match the DMBOK for people to use. And you can see right here, if I look at this one activity, defining data governance for the organization, here it is at a lower level. And you see, we're right in quality. This is a screenshot. We thought a screenshot would be a little bit easier, to and less issues perhaps with technology and performance. But this is, the definition of that activity broken out from the text, the text that DMBOK is, into a visual form. And breaking down, your readiness assessment to its lowest level. So the different activities that have to occur to come up with that business object, with that readiness assessment. So Close Reach is taking all of those pieces of the pie, building that high-level strategy model, and then, depending on the engagements that we're involved with, we'll blow that down to lower levels. We are using the regulation model to actually define the different parts of the standard. So just as we would in ISO, like we're dealing with Eric and Queedy, and with other standards, we're using the regulation model to build out those different components, a different viewpoint into the book of knowledge, the DAMA book of knowledge. So this is going to be, what we're doing over the next short while to make all of the, the layers, the next layer down, the concept models for each of these available to the government of Canada. And that really ties, back into, looking at the level of maturity that an organization is. And Carl, maybe you want to take over from here.
Yeah, so basically, most organizations are on some sort of maturity path, if you will, or journey. I use the word journey. And what we're intending here is to create the solution, if you want to call it DMPIM, whereas just like you got the DMBOK, but this is the Data Management Program Implementation Model. We see using that model and that solution set as a way to help organizations accelerate and through the levels of maturity. So, ultimately, we'd like to understand if, for the clients that we engage with, what's the current level of maturity, or even people to do their own maturity assessments, figure out what the target level is, and then we can map out with the framework and the model in the tool how to help. Because many organizations have planned, I would say, a pretty mature environment when it comes to their strategies. Their strategies calls for quite advanced levels of maturity in many cases, but I think people have struggled with getting there. And I think the timing is perfect for us to be able to help organizations map out a program for implementing, using all of the DAMA stuff, the reference models. And I guess the way I would see it is, instead of putting a 500-page book on the table saying, here, fill your boots with DAMA, we see this as more of a program plan and a project tracking, a program and project tracking capability informed by all of the models from DAMA and things of that nature. So that's kind of what the plan is.
So what we're actually doing, if we go back to this diagram, QualiWare, our close reach, is going to provide the DAMA reference model in the tool set. And we're working with Carl right now at instantiating the data, management program implementation model into an add-on that we're going to make available via the SALSA. So just like collaborative business planning, takes costing and scenario building around resourcing and costing to a different level, that to supplement the base capabilities of QualiWare, that's how we see the DMPIM. And that over the next few months, we're going to get that up and available via the SALSA. So we wanted to give people a heads up because it's a big topic for conversation these days. With CDOs being set up, people and offices, and we think the time is right for moving ahead with these things. So, any questions, comments from anybody? Anyhow, we think that there's some, Carl's been actively engaged with a couple of different departments, and we know that a couple of departments have approached us directly about assisting with their data management efforts. So this is part of our path forward. Carl, maybe you want to talk about possibilities for doing some maturity assessment.
Yeah, I mean, again, with the last slide there, talking about how one can move forward and lay out a program plan. Key step is to figure out exactly where you're at today. And, there might be certain areas that people are focused on now. I know there's a lot of master data management stuff going on, reference data management as well. So there's different pockets of what I'm feeling and seeing out there is there's different pockets of things happening. But what really we're trying to propose here is a program view. And I believe to the extent that you can convince the CDO and the CIO that a program is required, I think, and I appreciate the comments from the gentleman there, that if they can appreciate this kind of discussion, then I think that gives you support and energy for creating a program to implement data management rather than these spot projects here and there, because I've seen too many projects happen like it's an IT push, latest and greatest tool, but we haven't engaged the business who's expected to use it. So this program plan would round that out, and I think, you know, deliver real value, and hopefully they would get it. And starting off as, you know, maturity assessment survey, but you know, that would be a way to get started and engaged. But you know, there's other things as well. So appreciate any comments through Kevin, or you guys can reach out to me directly if you have any further. We're always looking for, you know, good ideas and input as to what we're up to. So I appreciate the time.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Thanks very much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Carl.
Cecile, you want to wrap it up?
Sure. Okay, well, I guess this is our last user group meeting for the year. 2020, almost over. Hope 2021 is better. So thank you very much, everybody, for your participation in our user group meetings over the past year. We really appreciate you joining and you asking questions and participating in the conversation. Our next user group meeting will be in January, the last Monday of the month. So we wish you all the best for the new year and season. I can't believe I'm actually saying that, Kevin. Seems too early. But thank you very much, everybody, for attending and joining in with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. We would normally have something before Christmas, you know, in our office, a little open house and things like that, but maybe we'll do something virtual.
Maybe we'll try something virtual, or maybe we'll wait till we all have.
Yes.
That's right. Oh, that's right. Okay, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
I'm sorry?
Pardon?
I was just joking. I said, you need to know my address. This is where to send my Christmas cheer beverage.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
yeah.
That's right.
True.
But I might spill
Everybody-
it coming over, Adam.
Everybody can direct message Kevin your address so he can send you.
Oh, thank
do.
you very
Thank you,
much.
Phil.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good evening.